The boardroom fell silent the moment my uncle slammed the transfer agreement onto the polished walnut table. "You've finally come to your senses." His smile stretched slowly across his face, victorious, relieved, greedy. Around him, every member of the Lin family relaxed, as though a dangerous storm had finally passed. Only I remained standing. The company's official seal rested beside my hand. One stamp. That was all it would take. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain washed over the skyline, turning the city into blurred streaks of gray. Inside, dozens of executives watched without breathing. "Cedric," my cousin Victor said, forcing concern into his voice. "No one wants this to become ugly. Uncle has given his whole life to the company." I looked at him. He still wore that same expensive watch, the same sapphire cufflinks, even the same fake smile. Nothing had changed, except me. I picked up the company's seal. The weight of it felt strangely familiar. A year ago, no, another chance ago, I had refused this transfer. I had fought every accusation, spent 18 exhausting months battling lawsuits, boardroom betrayals, anonymous media attacks, and endless family meetings. In the end, I had kept the company and watched every person I loved disappear. My mother died believing she had raised a selfish son. The employees turned against one another. Our biggest clients fled. The bank froze our credit lines. Then, when everything finally stabilized, Victor disappeared with hundreds of millions of dollars, leaving the company bankrupt, leaving me holding every legal responsibility, leaving my uncle weeping outside the courthouse, insisting he had known nothing. By the time the truth surfaced, there had been nothing left worth saving. Then came the impossible. One final opportunity. Not another life. Not another body. Just another chance. The same memories. The same people. The same room. The same decision. The only difference. I already knew who would destroy everything. I lowered the seal. "I'll sign." Gasps echoed around the room. Victor blinked. My uncle frowned. "Just like that." I smiled faintly. "You've wanted the company for years. I won't stand in your way." Silence. No one understood. Last time, they had expected me to fight. This time, my surrender frightened them more. The company lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Lin, are you certain?" "I'm certain." My uncle's fingers trembled slightly as he pushed the papers toward me. "You won't regret respecting your elders." "No, I wouldn't." He would. The seal struck the paper with a heavy thud. The transfer became official. Every executive began applauding. Victor even laughed. I knew family always comes first. Family. The word almost made me laugh. When the applause finally ended, I removed my company ID card, my access badge, my executive key, my office keys. One by one, I placed them neatly on the table. "I'll clear my office today." Uncle Raymond frowned. "You don't need to leave immediately." "I do." Victor stood. "At least stay as an advisor." "No. Cedric, I've spent enough years solving everyone else's problems." The room became strangely uncomfortable. They had expected anger, negotiation, conditions. Instead, I simply walked away. As I reached the door, my uncle spoke again. "You'll realize your mistake." Without turning around, I answered quietly, "I already have." The elevator doors closed. Only then did I finally allow myself to breathe. The company behind those glass walls no longer belonged to me. Neither did its coming disaster. By evening, my apartment looked almost empty. 2 boxes, a laptop, several books. That was all I chose to keep. Someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. I opened the door. My younger sister, Nora, stared at the packed boxes. "You actually left." "I did. They said you gave away everything." "I did." She stepped inside, shutting the door harder than necessary. "Why?" I poured 2 cups of tea before answering. "Do you trust me?" She frowned. "That's not an answer." "Do you?" After several seconds. "Yes." "Then don't invest another dollar into Lin Group." Her expression changed. "What? Sell every share?" "Cedric, that's our family's company." It was. She searched my face. "You know something?" I stayed silent. "You always stay quiet when you're hiding something." "I'm protecting you." "From what?" I looked toward the dark window. "From the future." Instead, I only said, "Greed." She laughed nervously. "That's too vague." I know. Cedric, promise me. She hesitated. I can't explain. You don't have to. She finally nodded. I'll sell. Relief spread through my chest. One person. If I could only save one person this time. Perhaps that would be enough. My phone vibrated. Victor. I ignored it. Again. 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 21 missed calls. Finally, a message appeared. Come back tomorrow. Uncle wants you to announce publicly that you left voluntarily. I stared at the screen. Last time, that announcement had become the rope they later wrapped around my neck. Every future lawsuit had started with carefully edited recordings from that press conference. Not this time. I typed only 3 words. Handle it yourselves. Then I turned my phone off. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Far away, the first domino had already begun to fall. The following morning, every financial news channel carried the same headline. Ling Group founder's nephew resigns. Family succession completed. The reporter smiled. The commentators praised stability. The stock price even climbed before noon. I watched the broadcast from a quiet cafe several blocks away. The waitress set a cup of black coffee in front of me. You don't look very happy for someone watching good news. Some celebrations arrived too early. She tilted her head, confused, before walking away. Across the television screen, Victor stood beside Uncle Raymond, confidently shaking hands with investors. I want everyone to know, Victor declared, that our family has never been stronger. I muted the television. Last time, I believed speeches mattered. Now I understood that numbers never lied. People did. My phone buzzed with a message from someone I hadn't expected. Miles Chun, former chief risk officer. Can we meet? In my previous chance, Miles had resigned 3 months before the company collapsed. Everyone blamed him for abandoning ship. Only much later had I discovered he had been trying to stop illegal financing deals. I replied with an address. Half an hour later, he entered the cafe. He looked exhausted. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. You really resigned? I did. He sat without ordering anything. I almost didn't believe it. I imagine many people didn't. He leaned forward. They're changing everything. I know. They've removed half the internal controls. I know. They're preparing acquisitions we can't afford. I know. His eyebrows pulled together. Ow! I stirred my untouched coffee. I've spent enough years listening during meetings. It wasn't a lie, just not the complete truth. Miles lowered his voice. Victor ordered me to approve loans backed by inflated assets. There it was. The beginning. Exactly where it had started before. What did you say? I refused. And now, they're replacing me. I nodded once. Then leave. He stared. Just leave. You've already done everything you can. But the company won't listen. His shoulders slumped. You sound certain. I am. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, what are you going to do? I looked through the cafe window toward the distant headquarters of Ling Group. Nothing. Nothing. They've spent years insisting I control everything. I smiled faintly. They're about to discover what happens when I don't. Miles let out a quiet laugh. I've never heard you speak like this. People change. He stood. If things become ugly, they will. May I call you? Anytime. As he left, I noticed someone sitting in a parked sedan across the street. Dark windows. Engine running. Watching. Corporate security. Victor never trusted anyone. Especially not me. I paid for my coffee and walked in the opposite direction. The sedan followed. 3 intersections later. Still following. Interesting. I entered a public library. Waited. Exited through another entrance. The sedan remained on the wrong street. Gone. So Victor was already nervous. Good. Fear made greedy people impatient. Impatience made mistakes. That afternoon, I received another visitor. This time it was my mother. She didn't knock. She walked straight inside my apartment carrying homemade soup. You've lost weight. I've been busy. She looked around. So few things. I didn't need a rest. Her eyes became red. Your uncle said you finally understood family. I nearly answered. Nearly. Instead I asked, do you believe him? She hesitated. I believe you're hurting. That simple sentence almost broke me. Last time, I had pushed her away trying to protect the company. Now, the company was gone. She wasn't. I accepted the bowl she offered. Stay for dinner. A small smile appeared. I thought you'd never ask. For the first time in what felt like years, we ate together without discussing shareholders, profits, or board meetings. Just food, weather, childhood memories. It felt peaceful until my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A trembling female voice whispered, "Mr. Lin?" "Yes. I'm from the finance department." I recognized her. Lena, one of the junior accountants. In my previous chance, she had disappeared before anyone could question her. "I shouldn't be calling." "Then why are you?" "They're deleting records." Every muscle in my body tightened. "What records?" I can't explain over the phone." She was crying. "I found something." "What?" A long silence. Then she whispered, "I think someone has been stealing from the company for years." The line suddenly went dead. I stared at the silent phone, not because I was surprised, because it had begun much earlier than before. Someone had accelerated the plan. And if I was right, Victor already knew someone inside the company had discovered the truth, which meant Lena was no longer just a witness. She was in danger. The call ended so abruptly that the silence afterward felt louder than Lena's trembling voice. I dialed her number immediately. No answer. Again, straight to voicemail. I stared at the phone for several seconds before slipping it into my pocket. Last time, I had rushed toward every crisis, every accusation, every fire, every time I believed I could save the company, every time I made myself the target. Not this time, but I also couldn't ignore someone asking for help. "There's somewhere you need to be." My mother noticed the change in my expression before I stood. "There may be." She placed her chopsticks down. "Cedric." I looked at her. "You always carry everyone's burdens." Her voice remained gentle. "Just remember, some people throw stones at the person trying to rescue them." I smiled faintly. "I remember. This time I truly did." The finance department occupied the 19th floor of Lin Group's headquarters. I didn't enter through the front entrance. My access card no longer worked anyway. Instead, I waited inside the cafe across the street. Employees came and went through the revolving doors. 42 minutes later, Lena appeared. She wasn't alone. Victor walked beside her. He wasn't smiling. Neither was she. She clutched a thick document folder against her chest. Victor leaned close, speaking softly. From this distance, I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the posture. Control disguised as kindness. Lena nodded repeatedly, too repeatedly. She was terrified. Victor patted her shoulder before returning inside. Only after he disappeared did Lena begin walking. Not toward the subway, toward the Riverside Park. I followed from half a block behind. She never looked back. She was too busy crying. When she finally reached an empty bench overlooking the river, she sat down and buried her face in both hands. I approached slowly. "Lena." She jumped to her feet. The folder nearly slipped from her arms. "Mr. Lin, you called me." Her eyes darted around the park. "We shouldn't talk here." "Then walk." We continued along the riverside path. Only after several minutes did she finally speak. "They know someone found the accounts." "What accounts?" She handed me several printed spreadsheets. I copied these before they erased everything. I stopped beneath a row of willow trees. The first page showed supplier payments. The second, consulting contracts. The third, offshore transfers. Every payment eventually flowed toward 3 shell companies. Companies that didn't exist. I didn't need to guess whose signatures authorized them. Victor's. My uncle's. And one more. A name I hadn't expected. Martin Zhao, the external auditing partner. Last time, everyone believed the auditors had been deceived. Apparently, they had been paid. Lena lowered her voice. "I thought maybe I misunderstood." "You didn't." I reported it. "To whom?" "Mr. Victor." I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Exactly as before. He thanked me. I'm sure he did. He told me to leave everything to management. And then, my computer was taken away. She swallowed hard. "They asked me to sign a confidentiality agreement. When you refused, they followed me home." Her voice cracked. "I don't think they're trying to protect the company. They're protecting themselves." She stared at me. "You already knew." I suspected. "No." She shook her head. "You knew." I folded the documents carefully. "I know enough." She looked close to collapsing. "What should I do?" "Disappear." Her eyes widened. What? Leave the city tonight. I have my parents. Take them. My job. Forget your job. I can't. You can. I met her eyes. If you stay, they will make sure no one believes you. A tear rolled down her cheek. I worked there for 6 years. I know. I thought loyalty mattered. It matters. I looked back toward the skyline where Lin Group's tower reflected the afternoon sun. It just doesn't matter to the people running that building. She nodded weakly. I'll go. Before leaving, she pressed a flash drive into my hand. I copied everything. You shouldn't have. I couldn't destroy the truth. She turned away before I could answer. Within seconds, she disappeared into the crowd. I looked down at the tiny drive resting in my palm. Last time, those files had never survived. This chance, the truth already existed outside the company. That evening, my apartment buzzer rang again. Miles stood outside. His normally calm expression had vanished. They fired me. I expected that. They promoted Victor's college roommate instead. I expected that too. Miles laughed bitterly. You say everything like you've read tomorrow's newspaper. If tomorrow keeps repeating yesterday. What? I simply opened the door. He stepped inside. I wasn't followed. I know. You checked. I always do. He shook his head. I don't understand you anymore. You don't need to. I handed him the flash drive. I need someone I trust. He stared at it. What is this? The reason the company will eventually collapse. His expression slowly hardened. You want me to expose them? No. Then why give it to me? So it survives if something happens to me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he nodded once. I'll keep it safe. 3 days passed. Lin Group announced 2 major acquisitions. The stock climbed another 9%. Financial television celebrated Victor as the new generation of leadership. Analysts praised Uncle Raymond's vision. The newspapers called the succession flawless. I turned each article over without finishing it. Markets rewarded confidence. Reality rewarded patience. On the 4th morning, Nora arrived carrying a folder. I sold everything. Every share certificate lay inside. She sat heavily across from me. I've never seen so much money in one account. You'll need it. You still think something terrible is coming. I do. She hesitated. I heard something else. What? Our uncle borrowed against the company. My eyes lifted. How much? No one knows. Who told you? A banker I went to university with. That was different. Last time, the borrowing happened months later. Victor wasn't simply repeating history. He was accelerating it. Greed always did. When people believed they couldn't lose, they stopped hiding. A sharp knock interrupted us. Neither of us moved. Another knock. Slower. More deliberate. I walked to the door. Standing outside was Uncle Raymond. He carried no assistants. No lawyers. No smile. Cedric, what brings you here? A conversation. I stepped aside. He entered, looking around the modest apartment. So this is how you're living now. It's peaceful. He ignored the answer. Nora quietly excused herself, leaving us alone. Uncle Raymond remained standing. I heard you've been speaking with former employees. I have friends. I hope those friendships aren't creating misunderstandings. There are many misunderstandings in our family. His eyes narrowed. I've always treated you as my own son. No, I answered calmly. You treated me as your insurance policy. His face stiffened. You become disrespectful. I become honest. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed dramatically. The company needs unity. It has your unity. It also needs your reputation. There it is. He reached into his briefcase and removed a prepared statement. I'd like you to appear at next week's shareholder meeting. I didn't touch the paper. And say what? That you fully support our leadership. I don't. You don't have to believe it. He said it so casually that it almost sounded reasonable. You only need to say it. I looked at him for a long moment. This was exactly how the family had always operated. Truth was negotiable. Appearance was everything. No. His jaw tightened. Cedric, no. The board may believe you've become hostile. They're free to believe whatever they wish. You'll damage the family. The family is damaging itself. He slammed the statement onto the table. You think walking away makes you innocent? No. I think walking away means I stop helping people destroy themselves. His breathing grew heavier. You sound just like your father. The room suddenly became very quiet. My father had built Lin Group beside him, then died believing loyalty still meant something. Uncle Raymond knew exactly where to strike. But this time, the wow no longer control me. You should leave. He stared at me in disbelief. You're dismissing me? I'm setting a boundary. He picked up his briefcase. At the door, he stopped. When this company reaches heights you never imagined. He looked back over his shoulder. Don't expect to return. I met his gaze without anger. I won't. The door closed. A minute later, my phone vibrated. Miles. I answered immediately. Cedric. His voice was unusually tight. The auditors are gone. What do you mean? The entire audit team resigned today. My grip tightened around the phone. All of them. Every single one. They're replacing them before quarterly reporting. Exactly as I feared. Victor was erasing every independent witness before the numbers became impossible to hide. Miles continued quietly. I also learned something else. What? The new finance director authorized a transfer this afternoon. How much? There was a long pause. When he finally answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. $380 million. I closed my eyes. The collapse had officially begun. And this time, it was happening far sooner than anyone outside that boardroom realized. $380 million. The number lingered in my mind long after the call ended. Not because of its size, because of its purpose. Money that large never disappeared by accident. It was moved, hidden, prepared. Last time, Victor had spent months constructing the illusion before emptying the company. This time he was skipping the illusion. He believed victory was guaranteed. That confidence would become his greatest weakness. I walked onto my apartment balcony. Below, morning traffic crawled through the city while office workers hurried toward another ordinary business day. No one knew one of the city's oldest family companies had already begun rotting from the inside. Appearances were always the last thing to collapse. The phone rang again. Miles. I checked the transfer. You found something. It didn't go overseas. I frowned. Where? Into Crescent Capital. The name meant nothing for a brief second. Then memory returned. Crescent Capital, a private investment company, officially independent, unofficially controlled through layers of nominees by Victor's university roommate, the same man who had just replaced Miles as chief risk officer. They're lending company money to themselves, I said quietly. Miles exhaled. I couldn't prove ownership before. You don't need to. What? They'll prove it themselves. Ow. Greed always leaves a signature. He fell silent. You really aren't going to stop them? I looked across the skyline. I stopped them once. And I became the villain. Miles had no answer. Neither did I. That afternoon, I received an unexpected invitation. Lin Group shareholder meeting. Attendance requested. Not required. Victor wanted me there. Not because he respected me. Because he wanted an audience. He wanted shareholders to see the former successor quietly accepting defeat. A final humiliation. I smiled. Some stages were useful. Others were traps. This one could become both. The conference hall buzzed with confidence. Investors laughed. Executives shook hands. Television crews arranged cameras. No one expected bad news. Why would they? The stock had climbed nearly 20% in 2 weeks. Victor stood at the center of the room, surrounded by reporters. Cedric. His voice carried easily across the hall. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure either. He laughed loudly enough for nearby cameras to hear. I'm glad we're showing everyone our family remains united. United. Another beautiful word ruined by dishonest people. He guided me toward the front row. Sit beside Uncle. I'll stand. Nonsense. I prefer standing. His smile flickered for half a second before returning. As you wish. The meeting began. Charts filled enormous screens. Revenue growth. Expansion plans. International partnerships. Every graph pointed upward. Every projection promised a brighter future. Investors applauded repeatedly. Then questions began. An elderly shareholder raised his hand. Mr. Victor, your expansion seems unusually aggressive. Victor smiled confidently. Great opportunities require courage. Another investor stood. What about increased debt? Our leverage remains healthy. Lie. What about risk controls? We've strengthened every department. Another lie. The applause continued. Then, a young woman near the back slowly stood. My heart skipped once. Lena. She was supposed to have left the city. She wore plain clothes, dark glasses. Her hands trembled. Mr. Victor. His expression froze almost imperceptibly. Yes. I worked in finance. The room became quieter. I have a question. Victor maintained his smile. Please. Why were accounting records deleted after internal reports were submitted? Silence. Absolute silence. Several cameras immediately turned toward her. Victor answered smoothly. No financial records were improperly deleted. Lena reached in her bag. She removed printed documents. I made copies. Gasps spread through the audience. Victor's smile finally disappeared. Security guards immediately started walking toward her. She noticed. So did I. She looked frightened, but she didn't run. I reported fraudulent payments. The guards reached her. Victor spoke calmly. This former employee appears emotionally distressed. One guard reached for the documents. Lena pulled them back. They stole company money. Investors erupted into whispers. Reporters surged forward. Camera flashes exploded throughout the room. I remained exactly where I was, watching, because I already knew what would happen next. Victor raised one hand. Escort her outside. The guards obeyed. Lena struggled. I have evidence. The documents scattered across the carpet. Pages slid beneath chairs. Investors instinctively bent down to pick them up. Too late. The truth had already entered their hands. Chaos spread through the conference hall faster than any speech ever could. What is this? Consulting invoices? Why are these companies registered to empty offices? Questions flew across the room. Executives began collecting the loose papers, but dozens had already been picked up by shareholders. Victor tried to regain control. Please remain calm. No one listened. One investor walked directly toward Uncle Raymond. Explain these transfers. They're confidential business arrangements. Then why are there no services attached? I'll have legal clarify. No. The investor's voice cut sharply through the room. I want answers. Another shareholder held up a document. This signature belongs to Mr. Victor. Every eye turned toward him. His confidence cracked. Only slightly. But I saw it. So did Uncle Raymond. He stepped toward the microphone. There appears to have been an administrative misunderstanding. Administrative. Interesting choice. Not denial. Not innocence. A misunderstanding. Small words often revealed large fears. Someone touched my shoulder. It was Miles. He had quietly entered through a side door. You were right. I usually wish I wasn't. He handed me his phone. Look, a financial news website had already posted photographs from inside the meeting. The headline read, Questions raised over Lin Group financial controls. It had taken less than 12 minutes. The market loved certainty. It hated doubt. Trading wouldn't close for another 3 hours. Miles looked toward the front of the room. Should we help Lena? I watched as several reporters surrounded her before security could force her outside. No. He looked at me in surprise. They can't silence her anymore. The cameras had already heard enough. Removing her now would only make the story bigger. Victor understood that too. He abruptly changed tactics. Miss Lena, his tone softened. If mistakes occurred, we welcome an independent review. There it was. Delay. Containment. Control the narrative. The oldest strategy in corporate history. But today's audience wasn't the board. It was the public. And the public had already begun asking questions. By evening, Lin Group's shares had fallen 11%. News channels replayed Lena's accusations continuously. Social media filled with speculation. Former employees began posting anonymous stories about unusual accounting practices. One voice encouraged another, then another. Truth was contagious once people realized they weren't alone. That night, someone knocked on my apartment door. Not gently. 3 hard strikes. I checked the security monitor. Martin Zhao, the auditor. I opened the door only halfway. He looked exhausted. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. I need to speak with you. I don't think we have anything to discuss. We do. You signed those audit reports. I know. You ignored the warnings. I know. His shoulders sagged. I made a terrible mistake. I studied him silently. Regret looked genuine. Fear looked even more genuine. What changed? He glanced nervously down the hallway before answering. They're blaming me. Of course they were. Greedy partners always searched for someone to sacrifice. When the investigation starts, his voice shook. Victor intends to say, I acted alone. And did you? No. Then why sign? He closed his eyes. They promised it was temporary. They always do. They said the money would be returned before year end. They lied. Yes. He looked directly at me. I kept copies. I felt the air in the hallway grow heavier. What kind of copies? Everything. Bank instructions, meeting minutes, private emails, signed approvals, not summaries, original documents. Enough to destroy careers. Enough to expose everyone. If they survived. Martin swallowed hard. I think they're following me. As if answering him, the elevator at the end of the corridor opened. Two men stepped out. Neither lived in my building. Neither looked surprised to see Martin. He looked over his shoulder, and all the color drained from his face. They found me. The taller man smiled politely. Mr. Zhao. His voice was calm. Mr. Victor would like another conversation. Martin instinctively stepped backward. Behind him, my apartment. In front of him, the men sent to retrieve him. For one long second, no one moved. Then Martin whispered without taking his eyes off them. They're not here to talk. Martin's whisper barely reached me. They're not here to talk. The taller man took another step forward, his smile never leaving his face. Mr. Zhao. His tone remained almost pleasant. You left the office in a hurry. Martin's breathing became uneven. I already resigned. Mr. Victor simply wishes to clear up a misunderstanding. No. The answer escaped Martin before he could stop himself. The second man quietly moved toward the stairwell, cutting off the other exit. Professional. Prepared. Not bodyguards. Problem solvers. I opened my apartment door wider. Come inside. Martin didn't hesitate. The moment he crossed the threshold, I shut the door. A knock came almost immediately. 3 slow taps. Cedric. The taller man's voice remained calm. We have no business with you. I believe you. Then please send Mr. Zhao outside. I don't think he wants to leave. A pause. Then, this is a family matter. No. I answered evenly. It's a legal matter. Silence settled in the hallway. Finally, the footsteps retreated. Not gone. Waiting. I checked the security monitor. Both men remained outside the elevator, pretending to check their phones. They'll stay, Martin whispered. I know. His hand shook so violently he nearly dropped his briefcase. Sit. He collapsed into a chair. I poured him a glass of water. It took 3 attempts before he could drink without spilling it. You said you kept everything. I did. Where? He looked toward the briefcase. Not here. Good. If someone took that case, they'd find almost nothing. What did you keep inside? Copies. And the originals? His eyes finally met mine. A safety deposit box. I nodded. You learned. I learned too late. He rubbed both hands across his face. I wasn't always like this. I know. My daughter was sick. There it was. Not an excuse. A reason. They offered to cover her surgery. They bought your silence. I told myself I'd fix everything later. His laugh sounded hollow. There was never a later. No, there never was. Greed rarely allowed people to leave halfway through. It always demanded one more compromise, one more signature, one more lie, until there was no road back. Martin reached into his jacket. Instead of documents, he removed a small key. This opens the box. I stared at it. I don't want it. You need it. No. He frowned. If I keep it, I'll look directly at him. They only need to eliminate one person. Realization slowly spread across his face. If you keep it, they'll never stop hunting you. His shoulders sagged. What should I do? For the first time, I pushed the key back toward him. Tell the truth yourself. The following morning, every major business channel carried breaking news. Regulators opened preliminary review of Lin Group finances. The announcement lasted less than 2 minutes. Its impact was immediate. Trading halted twice within the first hour. Investors demanded emergency explanations. Banks requested additional documentation. Credit agencies announced reviews. The beautiful castle Victor had built had developed its first visible crack. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Unknown numbers. Journalists. Former employees. Investment firms. Law offices. I ignored all of them. Then one call displayed a familiar name. Uncle Raymond. I answered after the fourth ring. Cedric. His voice sounded 20 years older. You've gone too far. I've done nothing. You encouraged this. I resigned. You've been meeting employees. They're free to speak. They're lying. Then evidence will clear your name. Silence. Heavy. Uneasy. Finally he asked, "What do you want?" The question surprised me. Not because he asked. Because he still believed everything had a price. I already took what I wanted. What? My peace. He breathed sharply. You'll destroy this family. I looked out across the city. No. I simply stopped carrying it. The line disconnected. He hadn't said goodbye. For the first time, he had no argument left. By late afternoon, Martin called. His voice sounded different. Steadier. I met with the investigators. You told them everything? Everything. They believed you? I gave them access to the safety deposit box. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. It had finally happened. The truth no longer depended on frightened witnesses. It depended on records. Bank transfers. Emails. Approvals. Facts. Facts rarely cared about family names. 2 days later, regulators executed search warrants at Lynn Group headquarters. Television helicopters circled above the building. Employees gathered outside the entrance, whispering as investigators carried sealed evidence boxes into waiting vehicles. I watched from a nearby cafe. Not hidden, not involved, just another customer with a cup of coffee. Across the street, reporters rushed toward anyone willing to speak. Then I saw Victor, for the first time in years. He looked afraid. His tie hung crooked. His hair was uncombed. He shouted at reporters. These allegations are politically motivated. No one listened. Questions came faster. Did you authorize the offshore transfers? Who owns Crescent Capital? Did you falsify financial statements? He pushed through the crowd without answering. Confidence had abandoned him. That evening, Nora arrived carrying her tablet. You should see this. She placed it on the table. A leaked email filled the screen. From Victor Lin to Martin Zhao. Subject: delay recognition until next quarter. Below were instructions. Alter reports. Move liabilities. Hide losses. At the bottom, Victor's digital signature. Nora looked at me. This is everywhere. It won't stop now. She nodded slowly. I used to think powerful people always escaped. They often do. And this time they documented everything. The emergency shareholder meeting took place 3 days later. Unlike the previous meeting, there were no celebration banners, no confidence speeches, no applause, only questions. I attended quietly from the back. The chairman stood. Due to newly discovered evidence, Mr. Victor Lin is suspended effective immediately. Murmurs swept through the room. A second resolution followed. Mr. Raymond Lin is removed from all executive authority pending investigation. My uncle slowly stood. This company exists because of me. An elderly shareholder answered before anyone else could. No, it existed because people trusted you. The word struck harder than any accusation. Trust. Once broken, no vote could restore it. Victor suddenly pointed toward me. This is his fault. Hundreds of eyes turned. I remained seated. He continued shouting. He planned this. One shareholder frowned. Did he force you to sign those transfers? No. Did he write those emails? No. Did he move the money? Victor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in his life, there was no one left to blame. Regulatory officers entered the hall. They walked directly toward him. Mr. Victor Lin. He stepped backward. I haven't been charged. Not yet. They presented official documents. We require your immediate cooperation. He looked desperately toward Uncle Raymond. His uncle looked away. The alliance built on greed collapsed exactly as greed always did. The moment survival became personal. Victor lowered his head. Without another word, he walked out surrounded by investigators. No one tried to stop them. No one applauded. No one defended him. The room remained completely silent as the doors closed behind the man who had once believed the company belonged to him. The silence that followed Victor's departure felt heavier than the shouting that had come before it. No one moved. No one celebrated. Victory had never been the point. The company had survived. The family had not. The chairman slowly removed his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. "I've worked here for 34 years. His voice echoed through the meeting hall. "I never imagined I'd witness this." Neither had most of the people sitting around him. Some investors stared blankly at the evidence folders in front of them. Others simply lowered their heads. No one wanted to admit they had applauded the very people now under investigation. I stood quietly and walked toward the exit. "Cedric," the chairman called after me. I stopped. "Would you remain for a few minutes?" Several directors turned toward me. For the first time in years, there was no suspicion in their eyes, only uncertainty. I walked back. The chairman gestured toward an empty chair. "You don't represent Lynn Group anymore." "I don't, but you understand it better than anyone in this room." I remained standing. "What do you need?" He sighed. "The board wishes to ask whether you would consider returning." A murmur spread across the directors. One elderly woman spoke first. "You built most of the operational systems." Another nodded. "The employees still trust you." Someone else added quietly, "We were wrong." 3 simple words. Words I had once believed I needed to hear. Now, they carried far less weight than I expected. I looked around the room. The polished table. The projection screens. The company logo mounted on the wall. Months ago, I would have fought endlessly to sit in one of these chairs. Now, it felt strangely small. I appreciate the offer. The chairman's shoulders relaxed, but his expression froze. "I won't return." Silence. One director frowned. "Why?" I smiled gently. "Because I finally learned the difference between responsibility and ownership." No one interrupted. I spent years believing that if I worked harder, sacrificed more, fixed every problem, everyone would eventually become a family. I shook my head. I was wrong. The chairman spoke quietly. "You've earned the right to refuse." "I haven't earned anything." I looked toward the city beyond the windows. "I've simply stopped confusing a company with a life." After a long pause, the chairman stood. "If you ever change your mind." "I won't." He nodded once. "I understand." For the first time, someone truly did. Outside the headquarters, reporters immediately rushed toward me. "Mr. Lin, are you taking over? Did you expose your family? Did you cooperate with investigators?" Microphones surrounded me. Camera flashes lit the afternoon. Months ago, I would have defended the company. Today, I defended only the truth. "I won't discuss an active investigation." Another reporter shouted, "Do you hate your uncle?" I paused. "No." The crowd became strangely quiet. "I pity the choices he made." "What about Victor?" "The same." "You don't want revenge?" I looked directly into the nearest camera. If consequences look like revenge, perhaps people should ask who created those consequences. No one asked another question. I walked away before they remembered how. That evening I visited my father's grave. The cemetery rested on a quiet hillside overlooking the river. Fresh wind carried the scent of pine trees through the fading sunlight. I placed white chrysanthemums beside the stone. I couldn't save the company. The words sounded almost peaceful, but I finally stopped letting it destroy us. The silence that followed felt different from loneliness. It felt like acceptance. "I spent so many years trying to finish your dream." I smiled faintly. "I forgot to build one of my own." Leaves rustled gently behind me. When I turned, my mother stood several steps away. She hadn't interrupted. She had simply waited. "You always talk to him." "Only when I finally understand something." She walked beside me. "I think." She looked toward the grave. "He already knew." 2 months passed. The investigations continued. Charges expanded. Executives resigned almost weekly. The financial media moved on to newer scandals. The city never stayed interested in one tragedy for long. Life, however, continued. For the first time since university, I woke each morning without checking market reports, without emergency meetings, without dozens of unread emails demanding impossible decisions. The silence felt unfamiliar, then comforting. One afternoon, Miles invited me to lunch. He looked healthier than I had ever seen him. No dark circles. I laughed as we shook hands. You noticed. I notice everything now. We ordered simple noodles from a small family restaurant. No investors. No directors. No expensive private dining rooms. Just lunch. I accepted another position, Miles said. Congratulations. A manufacturing company. No family politics? He grinned. None. Then you found a rare place. He became serious. What about you? I've been thinking. Dangerous. It usually is. He leaned forward. So, I want to help companies before they collapse. He blinked. As a consultant, I nodded. Not to maximize profits. Then, to recognize warning signs. He laughed softly. You become a doctor. For businesses. And families. I looked out the restaurant window. If they'll listen. Several weeks later, a modest office opened on the 10th floor of an older building downtown. No marble lobby. No gold company logo. Just a simple glass door. Cedric Lynn, governance and risk advisory. Nora carried the last cardboard box inside. I still can't believe you chose this place. It has good sunlight. She laughed. You've changed. I hope so. The first client arrived that afternoon. A small logistics company. Its founder looked exhausted. My brothers think I'm overreacting. I smiled knowingly. Tell me everything. For 3 hours. I listened. Not because I already knew the answers. Because someone had finally chosen honesty before disaster. When the meeting ended, the founder stood. No one's ever asked so many questions. Questions are cheaper than lawsuits. He laughed all the way to the elevator. Business grew slowly. Intentionally. I refused projects that required hiding numbers. I declined clients looking for someone to justify dishonest decisions. Word spread anyway. Not because I promised miracles. Because I refused to sell illusions. Late one evening, there was another knock on my office door. Lena stood outside. She looked completely different. Healthier. Confident. You left the city. I did. And I came back. She smiled. I found another accounting job. I'm glad. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. Several former Lynn Group employees stood together outside a neighborhood restaurant. Smiling. No executives. No board members. Just ordinary people rebuilding ordinary lives. We still meet every month. She looked at me warmly. Not to talk about what happened. What do you talk about? The future. I looked at the photograph for a long moment. That single picture meant more than every quarterly report I had ever signed. Some losses could never be recovered. Some people, however, could still begin again. As Lena left, I placed the photograph beside my desk instead of filing it away. It wasn't evidence. It was a reminder. The strongest companies were never built on money. They were built on trust. And trust was something worth protecting. The first letter arrived on a rainy Monday. No return address. No signature. Only a single sheet of paper folded twice. I opened it at my desk before my first appointment. I was wrong about you. Nothing else. No explanation. No request. I placed it inside a drawer and returned to work. Over the following weeks, more letters arrived. One came from a retired department manager who admitted he had voted to remove me because he feared losing his pension. Another came from a supplier who confessed he had accepted Victor's lies without ever asking my side. Some apologized. Some simply thanked me for refusing to hide the truth. I answered none of them. Not because I was bitter. Because forgiveness did not require correspondence. It required letting the past stop controlling the present. One crisp autumn morning, Nora walked into my office carrying 2 coffees. You've become impossible to surprise. I'll take that as a compliment. She handed me 1 cup. I have news. I looked up. The government announced formal indictments. I waited. She slid her phone across the desk. The headline filled the screen. Former Lynn Group executives charged with fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation. Below the headline were 2 familiar photographs. Victor, Uncle Raymond. Neither looked like the confident men who had celebrated my resignation months earlier. Victor stared blankly at the cameras. Uncle Raymond looked 20 years older. Neither wore a smile. Neither had anyone standing beside them. Greed had eventually collected every debt. Nora watched my face carefully. How do you feel? I consider the question honestly. I feel The answer came more slowly than expected. Finished. She smiled gently. That's a good word. It is. The trial attracted enormous public attention. Television stations broadcast every major hearing. Financial commentators debated corporate governance. Former executives negotiated plea agreements. More evidence surfaced almost daily. Martin testified for 3 consecutive days. His voice shook at first. By the end, it no longer did. He admitted every document he had altered, every meeting he had attended, every payment he had accepted. He never tried to justify himself, only to tell the truth completely. The courtroom remained silent through most of his testimony. Truth rarely needed dramatic performances. Facts were dramatic enough. I never attended. Not once. There was nothing left for me to prove. One afternoon, however, my lawyer called. The defense requested your appearance. I declined. They may issue a subpoena. If they do, I'll appear. The subpoena never came. Victor no longer wanted me in court. He already knew the evidence spoke louder than either of us ever could. Winter arrived quietly. Snow settled across the city in thin white layers. My office window overlooked a small public square where children built uneven snowmen during lunch breaks. For a long time, I simply watched them. No stock charts, no emergency calls, no boardroom arguments, just laughter. Strange how peaceful ordinary life could become once you stopped chasing extraordinary approval. Spring returned with clear skies and warmer mornings. My consulting firm had grown beyond anything I had planned, not because I expanded aggressively, because clients recommended us to people who valued honesty over shortcuts. Miles knocked lightly before entering my office. You have a visitor. Who? He stepped aside. Uncle Raymond stood in the doorway. He wore plain clothes instead of tailored suits. His hair had turned almost completely gray. His shoulders, once impossibly straight, now sagged with quiet exhaustion. I won't stay long. I nodded toward the chair opposite my desk. He sat slowly. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked around the modest office. You seem happy. I am. He smiled faintly. I spent years believing happiness came after success. He lowered his eyes. I had them backward. I listened. No anger remained between us. Only distance. I blamed everyone except myself. His voice had lost its old authority. I blamed the market, the board, my partners, even you. He looked up. I never admitted that I created a son who believed winning mattered more than integrity. The words hung quietly between us. I failed Victor long before the company failed. I said nothing. Some realizations belonged to the person who discovered them, not the person who received them. He reached into his coat and placed an old brass key on my desk. I recognized it immediately. The key to my father's original office. It should have been yours years ago. I gently pushed it back. No. He looked confused. It belongs in the company museum. He stared at me. It isn't my life anymore. For the first time since entering, he truly smiled. Not proudly, not confidently, just honestly. I think your father would have been proud of the man you became. He stood. At the door he paused. I'm sorry. No excuses. No explanations. Only 2 words. I nodded once. I know. He left without looking back. I never saw him again. Several months later, I accepted an invitation to speak at University Business School. The lecture hall was filled with students eager to learn how to build successful companies. Instead, I told them a different story. I spoke about trust, about quiet compromises, about the danger of believing intelligence could replace integrity. Near the end, one student raised his hand. If you had another chance. He smiled awkwardly. Would you keep the company this time? The room became completely silent. I smiled. I already had another chance. And I finally chose the one thing no company could ever give me. What was that? I looked through the windows where the afternoon sun painted long golden lines across the campus. My own future. The students applauded softly. Not because the answer was dramatic, because they understood it. As I left the stage, my phone vibrated. A message from Nora. Mom wants everyone home for dinner. Don't be late. I smiled before typing a single reply. I'll be there. Outside, the city moved forward exactly as it always had. Businesses would rise. Others would fail. Families would argue. Some would heal. The world had never promised fairness. Only consequences. I had once believed saving everything was strength. Now I understood something far more valuable. Sometimes the strongest decision a person could make was to step aside, tell the truth when it mattered, and allow greed to destroy itself. Then walk toward a future built not on inheritance, but on character.